Hey guys, I'm going to be reading outside to you today, so hopefully the wind and the wind chimes and the birds don't drive you too crazy. But we're going to start off the day with chapter 18 from One False Note by Gordon Korman, book 2 in the 39 Clues series. Amy's vacuum cleaner wheeze threatened to suck her brother in. Okay, she told herself, don't panic. Why not? He asked bitterly. If there ever was a time to panic, this is it. What happened to the boat? Aw, Dan, she moaned. Why'd you have to hide the Nannerl pages on something they can pick up and sail away? Dan bristled. Anguish, disappointment, and frustration mingled in his stomach, a roiling, toxic brew. I didn't have a lot of choice, little Miss Perfect. I was on a motor launch with half the Janus branch chasing me, and what help was I getting from my dear sister? Oh, you can't drive a boat? That's all I ever hear from you. You can't. We shouldn't. It's impossible. I saved our butts back there. This isn't about butts, Amy pointed out. It's about clues, and that means the diary pages. Which the Cobras could have taken off of us if I hadn't stashed them on the Royal Saladin, Dan shot back. You think I'm a stupid baby who's too immature to understand what's at stake. Well, you're the one who doesn't get it. A contest? A search? Who's better at that kind of stuff, you or me? She scowled at him. We're not talking about strafing the neighborhood with bottle rockets. You're treating me like a kid again, he exploded. Okay, I like bottle rockets and water balloons and cherry bombs. I lick batteries. I experiment. You're a regular Madame Curie. At least I try things, he persisted. It's better than sitting around biting your nails wondering, should I or shouldn't I? His sister sighed miserably. Fine, I'm sorry. It still doesn't answer the million-dollar question. What happens now? He shrugged. He wasn't ready to accept her apology, but there was nothing to be gained by continuing the argument. We wait. What else can we do? The boat moored here once. Maybe it'll come back. She spoke the words he'd been dreading, the awful possibility that haunted him. What if before was a one-time thing? What if we've lost those pages forever? Dan had no answer. All at once, the breakneck pace of it caught up with him. 5 hours in the Fiat, tailing the limo, Disco Volante, the Janus stronghold, the canal chase, the Cobras, and now this. He could have flopped down on the stone walkway and slept for a year. It was a crushing exhaustion that sucked the strength out of every single cell in his body. He felt old at 11. Amy must have sensed this because she put a supportive arm around his shoulders as they headed back to the church to update Nellie on the latest twist. We could be waiting a long time, Amy told her. Maybe you should find a hotel and get a few hours sleep. If you two think I'm leaving you alone for another minute today, then you've been drinking the canal water, the au pair said severely. Go and wait. I'll be here. Merp, Saladin added drowsily. Good old Nellie. The show of support lightened the mood slightly. The thought of someone who would look out for them, someone older, even if only by a handful of years, seemed almost parental. It was a mere pinlight in a vast void, yet Amy and Dan Cahill had seen nothing in that darkness for a very long time. But as they settled in behind the church to wait, the grim reality began to press down on them. If they could not recover the papers encased in the vinyl seat cushion of the Royal Saladin, they were at a complete dead end. They had staked everything on this quest. Washing out would leave them as nothing more than fugitives from Massachusetts social services. Homeless orphans with no past and no future, stranded half a world away from anyone or anything familiar. The minutes passed like months, as if time itself had been slowed by the black hole gravity of their situation. They hugged themselves against the clammy dampness of the night, chilled further by fear and uncertainty. Amy took in the lights of Venice gleaming off the water. Weird, huh? That so many bad things can happen in such a beautiful place? Dan was not on her wavelength. Maybe we should steal another boat. Then at least we can cruise the canals. The Royal Saladin must be somewhere. He looked at her intensely. Giving up is not an option. Then how would we know the Royal Saladin won't come back a minute after we leave? Here we are, and here we stay. For Dan, it was extra special torture. Doing something, even the wrong thing, was easier to take than sitting around. The first hour was misery. The second was actual physical pain. By the third, they were numb, sunk deep in despair as the city sounds and motorboat noise diminished, leaving only lapping water and distant accordion music. They'd always known that their quest was a long shot, but neither had expected defeat to take this form, An unfortunate choice, stashing a few vital pieces of paper in a hiding place that got up and left. Both sat forward on the stone path. Was the music getting louder? The lilting melody swelled, and a boat sailed around the bend of the canal, lit up like a Christmas tree. The open stern was packed with revelers, dancing and celebrating wildly. Amy and Dan felt like celebrating themselves. It was the Royal Saladin. Dan looked on from the shadows. A party? Not a party, Amy managed. A wedding. The bride and groom embraced by the wheelhouse. White flower girls showered them with rose petals. Laughter rang out. Champagne toast soared. There must have been 15 people squeezed onto the small craft, including the accordion player, who was balanced precariously on a dive platform. Dan was intent on the seat pad, where he knew the Nannerl pages were hidden. 5,000 boats in Venice, and I had to pick the one from the Tunnel of Love. What are we going to do? This brouhaha could last all night. I don't think so. See? 2 tuxedo-clad men were clumsily attempting to tie the Royal Salad into the bridge dock. It took several tries, and the father of the bride very nearly tumbled over the rail into the canal. Finally, though, they got the craft moored. Excuse me. And the wedding party began to come ashore. Amy and Dan ducked behind a half wall as the guests climbed the stairs to the church of Santa Luca. The best man brought up the rear. Before leaving the Royal Saladin, he seized the bench cushion as his partner dancing onto the dock to the accompaniment of the accordionist. Both Cahill's hearts skipped a beat. It was the pad that contained the precious diary pages. The others laughed and cheered as the best man waltzed the pad toward the steps. A thin film of sweat formed on Dan's brow. What's this clown doing? Is he really stupid enough to take a seat cushion to a wedding? At the last moment, the man tossed the pad back aboard the Royal Saladin and followed the rest of the guests up the stairs. Amy and Dan crouched in silence as the wedding party crossed the churchyard and filed into Santa Luca. Even when they heard the heavy door slam shut, they remained still and hidden. After so many reversals of fortune today, they half expected a meteorite to hurtle from the sky and vaporize them if they dared to move. Finally, Dan stood up. Come on, let's get those diary pages before they end up on the honeymoon cruise. Their Venice hotel was cheap, mainly because it had no water view. That had been the Cahills' one condition. No more canals, Dan had said firmly. I hate them. While Amy and Dan took long showers to warm up and wash away the none-too-clean canal water, Nellie busied herself with the diary pages. It was only 3 handwritten sheets, but they contained some astounding information. You're not going to believe this, you guys, Nellie breathed. No wonder somebody ripped these pages out. They're all about how worried Nannerl was. She thought Mozart was going crazy. Crazy, echoed Dan. You mean like stand on your head and spit nickels kind of crazy? He was running himself into major debt, Nellie explained, following the flowery German script with her finger, spending more money than he earned. But here's the thing. The stuff he was buying was pointless and weird. He was importing rare and expensive ingredients from overseas. Amy's ears perked up at the word ingredients. Remember iron solute? That's an ingredient too. All this must be mixed up with the 39 clues somehow. Mozart was in it up to his ears, Dan agreed, just like Ben Franklin. Nellie turned to a different page. The diary mentions Franklin, too, right here. Mozart was in communication with him. You know what Nannerl calls him? Our American cousin. And you'll never believe who else was a Cahill. Only Marie Antoinette, that's who. We're related to the Queen of France? Amy exclaimed in awe. And the Austrian royal family, too, Nellie went on. That was the connection. She and Mozart met when they were kids. When she married the future King Louis and went to France, she became the go-between for Franklin and Mozart. Amy was so astounded by this overload of information that she almost missed the faint pencil lines in the margin next to Nannerl's heavy calligraphy. Her surprise was accompanied by a flood of emotion. Grace wrote this, she said in a watery voice. I'd know that handwriting anywhere. Dan stared. Our grandmother ripped out part of Nannerl's diary? Not necessarily, but these pages were in her hands at some point. She traveled all over the world. She's mixed up in this quest 50 different ways. She squinted at the spidery script beside Marie Antoinette's name and read aloud. The word that cost her life, minus the music. Dan sighed in fond annoyance. That's Grace, all right. Clear as mud. Nellie was exasperated. What's the matter with you, Cahills? Why does everything have to be a puzzle? Why can't you just come out and say what you mean? Then it wouldn't be the 39 clues, Dan pointed out. It would be the 39 statements. Amy looked thoughtful. The thing Marie Antoinette was most famous for was this. When someone told her the peasants were rioting because there was no bread, she said, let them eat cake. Dan made a face. You get famous for that? Amy rolled her eyes. Don't you see? There was no cake. There was no food at all. It became a symbol for how the rich were totally out of touch with the needs of the poor. Those words helped set off the French Revolution, and that was when Marie Antoinette died by the guillotine. Sweet, the guillotine, Dan approved. Now it's getting interesting. Nellie raised an eyebrow. So you're saying that the word that cost her life was cake? Minus the music, added Amy. What could that mean? Well, mused Nellie, Marie Antoinette spoke French, so... Wait a minute, Amy exclaimed. I know this. Grace told me about it when I was a little kid. How come you can always dredge up some weird Grace conversation from 1,000,000 years ago? Dan demanded, his emotions suddenly close to the surface. She's only been gone a few weeks, and I can barely remember her voice. That old stuff is important, Amy insisted. We knew her as a cool grandmother, but all those years, I think she had a hidden agenda, too. She was training us for this contest, planting pieces of information that we were going to need. This might be one of them. And what exactly is this? Nellie prompted. When Marie Antoinette said let them eat cake, she's usually quoted using the French word brioche, but Grace was very careful to tell me that she used the more common term for cake, gâteau. Dan's brow furrowed. Cake is cake, isn't it? Unless this had nothing to do with cake, Nellie suggested. According to Nan Earl, Marie Antoinette was sending secret messages between Franklin and Mozart. Maybe it's some kind of code. So gâteau is a message and brioche isn't. And they mean the same thing? Dan put in dubiously. Amy shook her head. I don't know what it means, but I'm positive it's a piece of the puzzle. Dan was studying the Nan Earl. Whew, almost sneezed. Oh, excuse me. Dan was studying the Nan Earl pages over Nellie's shoulder. There's another note. Look. The pencil lines were even fainter, but there was no question it was Grace's writing. This time it was right in the center of the page. D is greater than H-I-C. Dan frowned. Maybe she had the hiccups? Wait, the markings are right over a name. Amy squinted at the page. Fidelio Rocco. That's the guy on Uncle Alistair's paper, Dan said excitedly. Mozart performed at that guy's house. Nellie translated from the German. It says here he was a big-time merchant and business honcho. Mozart hired him to import some super expensive kind of steel that was only forged in the Far East. Nan Earl blames Rocco for overcharging her brother and landing him in debt. And guess what she calls him? Blood-sucking money grubber? Dan suggested. She calls him cousin. Dan's eyes widened. Another Cahill? Amy unzipped her brother's backpack and took out his laptop computer. Let's see what we can learn from our Italian relative.